The personal jewelry of the last Tsarina of Russia, Empress Alexandra Fyodorova, born 1872, murdered by the Bolsheviks in 1918, provides a living, tangible timeline of her private life, quite apart from the glittering jewels which she wore as a Romanov bride. Inevitably, the public life and the private sphere overlapped into jewelry, where Alexandra or Alix received magnificent personal gifts from the Tsar, such as the jewel-studded engraved eggs crafted by the St. Petersburg goldsmith Peter Carl Fabergé, which began as an anniversary tradition during the reign of her father-in-law, to mark the celebration of Easter in the Russian Orthodox Church calendar. As a child, Empress Alix received family presents. One of her teeth was made into a lily-of-the-valley brooch for her grandmother, Queen Victoria, and it is still in the royal collection. This is yet another example of the sentimental jewelry of the Victorian age, and you can learn more about death jewelry in the Lord Byron videos on this channel. The Queen Mother of England received a lily-of-the-valley brooch from Fabergé in the 1950s, creating a dialogue between jewelry spanning generations. Queen Victoria gave Empress Alix, then Princess Alexandra of Hesse, a watch, presumably for her 10th birthday, because Alexandra's thank you letter to the Queen is dated June 10, 1882. As Princess Alix of Hesse, Alexandra received items of jewelry as personal gifts. Her maternal English grandmother, Queen Victoria, gave her a memorial bracelet containing a picture of her father, Grand Duke Ludwig IV of Hesse, who died in 1892, an event which Alexandra's biographer, Baroness Sophie Buxhoveden, described as perhaps the greatest sorrow of Princess Alix's life. She also predictably gave jewelry as personal gifts in return to close friends, brooches being a particularly favored choice. In her daughter, Grand Duchess Olga's royal portrait, brooches of diamonds and sapphires sparkle at her chest. You can learn more about Grand Duchess Olga Nikolaevna's jewelry on this channel. The Hesse diamond Jubilee brooch was a gift from several of Queen Victoria's grandchildren, all of them descendants and their spouses, of the late Princess Alice, Grand Duchess of Hesse and by Rhine. The group included 4 members of the Russian Imperial family, Emperor Nicholas II and Empress Alexandra of Russia, along with her sister, Grand Duchess Ella, and her husband, Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich. Alix and Ella's brother, Grand Duke Ernest Louis of Hesse and by Rhine, also contributed to the gift which still exists, along with his first wife, Grand Duchess Victoria Melita, who was also one of Queen Victoria's grandchildren. The group was rounded out by Alice's eldest daughter, Princess Victoria, and her husband, Prince Louis of Battenberg. The Jubilee brooch was worn by Queen Camilla in 2007. Queen Alexandra, Empress Alexandra, replied in a thank you letter to Queen Victoria, "My own darling grandmama, I send you my most loving and heartfelt thanks for the lovely bracelet with my beloved papa's head. Nothing could have given me greater pleasure." And tellingly, Alix continued, "I shall wear it constantly." This is important because it shows jewelry of the time was meant to carry around an association with the person concerned, very similar to how Queen Victoria would take out a locket from her corsage when on holiday in Italy. When she opened it and held it up as she sat in the carriage, the locket contained an image of the late Prince Albert, which she held up so that he might see the repair work, which had been done on the recently restored Duomo. This was so notable that it was related by the Honorable George Peel to Sir Harold Nicholson some 60 years after the event. These actions by Queen Victoria, who was a parent in many ways to Empress Alix, may be why she called her jewelry medicines to her family during her exile. We can see a sort of memorial locket in the photographs made of Alix after the death of her mother, Grand Duchess Alice of Hesse. Princess Irene, her elder sister, is also wearing one. So perhaps Queen Victoria commissioned these lockets. We also see a locket worn by Empress Alex's eldest daughter, Olga, while on the yacht Standard, but it doesn't seem to have been a regular feature of Olga's jewelry. This is a surprising choice, since lockets containing Russian Orthodox icons were found in the Romanov collection dating back to the 1880s, and so the wearing of lockets could have been a great bridge between the culture of Empress Alix and the culture of the Russian people. Empress Alix was given 2 bracelets by her uncle, Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, and a photograph in the Royal Photograph Collection shows the prince with his arm affectionately around his young niece, aged 5 or 6 at the time. These bracelets had a life of their own. It is almost certainly these, which Alix wore when she went to take her cure at Harrogate in May 1894, a month after her engagement, potentially after her realization that her betrothed wasn't a virgin. She wrote to her fiancé, the Tsarevich Nicholas, "I had my first sulphur bath this morning. It did not smell lovely, and made my silver bracelet, which I never take off, quite black, but that one can clean with the powder one uses for cleaning up one's silver things." This is important to show that Empress Alix cared for her jewelry so much she never took it off and cleaned it herself. These bracelets may be those which are shown on the X-ray made of the Tsarina's hand today at the Harvard Medical Library in the Francis A. Countway Library of Medicine. When we turn to Romanov royal weddings, gifts such as vases were given. A unique porcelain crater vase in neoclassical style circa 1873 was made by the Imperial porcelain factory in St. Petersburg, Russia. A foot tall, the vase was made for the wedding of the daughter of Tsar Alexander II, Grand Duchess Marie, and Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, the second son of Queen Victoria. The wedding took place in January 1874 at the Winter Palace. It is a rare example of a ceremonial vase bearing the state coat of arms, the imperial double-headed eagle, which was a special target for Bolshevik destruction due to its nationalistic and recognizable value. The front of the vase was painted with two-tone gold Russian imperial eagle. The back was decorated with the imperial monogram MA placed within a laurel leaf. The handles were embellished with laurel garlands. Acanthus leaves on contrasting gold ground decorated the base and rim of the vase. It was further embellished with two-tone gold classical laurel leaves. Impressed Cyrillic characters around the metal screw are first letters of the sculptor's name Vase, apparently for Vasily, and SH. The vase was marked with a green factory mark in the form of Alexander II's cipher and numeral 28. Poignantly, in Empress Alix's last diary entry for 1918, amongst the last entries for the month in which she was executed in the Ipatiev House of Special Purpose at Ekaterinburg, we read for the 4th of July, "The commandant and his young assistant made us show all our jewels we had on, and the younger one noted all down, and then they were taken from us. They left me only 2 bracelets from Uncle Leopold, which I cannot take off, and left each of the children the bracelets we gave them, and which cannot be slipped off. The children's golden bracelets, along with pearl necklaces, were given to them by their mother for their birthdays." These bracelets must have remained on Empress Alix's wrist until the very end, when she wrote her final entry for July 16th, 1918. She closed with the words that have never found any continuance: 10.5 to bed, 15 degrees of heat. They must have similarly been worn by her when preparing what she called medicines, when the jewels she and her daughters owned were hand-sewn into their corsets for safe keeping, against which the bullets from the Bolsheviks ricocheted. You can learn more about the Romanovs' last days, including scholarship into Grand Duchess Olga's emotions and potential gun ownership, on this channel. Jewelry formed an integral part of Alexandra and Nicholas's courtship and engagement. They scratched their names into the window panes at Peterhof Palace in 1884, when the Hessian princess came to Russia for the wedding of her elder sister, Princess Elizabeth, or Ella, to Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich. Alexandra wrote Our Window Panes, and 10 years earlier, Nicholas had written, Alix and I wrote our names on the rear window of the Italian house. We love each other. Their names would have been scratched in with diamond rings. Their names are similarly scratched into a window at the Hessian hunting lodge of Wolfsgarten. Alexandra made her first trip to Russia at the age of 12 for Ella's wedding. At some point during the trip, Nicholas pressed a small brooch into Alexandra's hand. She accepted his gift, but later gave it back to Nicholas at a party sometime before her departure for Germany. Perhaps because of this, Alexandra referred to Nicholas in heavily coded private correspondence with the close friend of her youth, Tony Beckerbracht, as the Broochmensch, literally the brooch person. Her endeavor into ciphers would continue in her marriage to Nicholas. Her ability to speak German would win her no favors with the Russian people during World War I, when she was accused of being a German spy. But it was in English, not German, that she and her husband really wrote to one another, their letters sweet and romantic, with Tsar Nicholas II referring to himself as her, quote, hubby. After the first trip to Russia, sketches of ladies in grand dresses filled Empress Alix's notebook back in Darmstadt. There is a pencil sketch of a Russian lady in a tiara and a wedding dress, perhaps conveying her wishes and hopes during this time. But this could also be in memory of her elder sister Ella's wedding. Alexandra's diary for 1889 records she wrote white diamonds for a ball at the Winter Palace during her winter visit to St. Petersburg. As Princess of Hesse, Alexandra wore modest jewelry for studio photographs, more than several bracelets, a string of pearls, and a half-moon or star in her hair, which appears on various occasions and was fashionable at the time. The Viennese mistress of Crown Prince Rudolph of Austria, Baroness Mary Vetsera, wore a half-moon in her hair for formal photographs, and you can learn more about Crown Prince Rudolph's mother in her video on this channel about the Empress CC wedding dress. Alix wore an emerald necklace for the Renaissance ball given at Darmstadt in 1891, as well as emeralds in her hair. Emeralds have immense meaning to the Russian people as they can be domestically mined in Russia, and it was perhaps with this in mind that Empress Alix chose the stone. Her first coming-out ball, aged 17 at Darmstadt, seems to have been the occasion for a mere pearl necklace and bracelets, as studio photographs indicate. Photographs for a themed ball at Darmstadt also show a star in her hair in 1887. Further engagement. The Tsarevich gave Alix many items of personal jewelry, which she treasured, as she did all things from this blissfully happy period in their new lives together. Later, less than 6 months later, ended forever by the unexpected death of Nicholas's father, Tsar Alexander III, at Lavadia. Just as a brooch had been pressed back into his hand at a party in Russia back in 1884, so in 1894 Nicholas showered the fiancée whom he had dreamed of one day marrying, as he wrote in his journal for December 1891, with jewels. She received a pink pearl ring as an engagement ring, a chain bracelet with a large emerald and sapphire diamond brooch, re-identified through recent research. The chain bracelet was a gift to Alexandra, which Nicholas gave to her when visiting England in the summer of 1894 as the guest of Queen Victoria, as was a necklace of pink pearls. Queen Victoria saw all these presents, and Alexandra recalled how the Queen said to her, "Now do not get too proud, Alix." But pearls would become a lifelong love of Alexandra's, as her daughters regularly wore pearl bracelets and necklaces. The most fabulous engagement present was a sautoir of pearls from her future father-in-law, Tsar Alexander III, handcrafted by Fabergé and worth 250,000 rubles at the time. Alexandra wrote to her future mother-in-law, the Empress Marie Feodorovna, "How can I thank you and dear uncle enough for the magnificent present you were so awfully kind as to send me? It is much too beautiful for me. It gave me quite a shock when I opened up the case, saw those beautiful stones." Tsar Nicholas II sent his wife a bracelet for her birthday while she was taking her cure in Yorkshire, a month after their engagement. "And your glorious bracelet, you naughty monkey, how could you dare to give me such a magnificent thing?" When Tsarevich Nicholas visited England as the guest of Queen Victoria in the summer of 1894, he accompanied Alexandra and the Queen to Osborne before sailing back to Russia. When he departed, Alexandra was left holding his farewell present in her hand. It was a diamond brooch, on which had been engraved the words, "Nicky's goodbye tear." Alexandra wrote to Nicholas, "How you do spoil me. There you have gone and given me that glorious brooch with pearl drops, a thing I have always longed for, but still much too good for me. I felt quite shy wearing it tonight." It was almost as if Nicholas wanted to press the brooch which had been returned to him so early in their courtship back into Alexandra's hand again, permanently. It seems a sort of precursor to the famous Lord of the Rings Arwen and Aragorn necklace scene when Aragorn deported Rivendell. As a Romanov bride, Alexandra would wear fabulous jewelry, as had her elder sister Ella at her wedding in 1884, when Ella's diamond earrings were so heavy they had to be supported by wires, which during the long wedding ceremony cut deep into her skin. When it was Alexandra's turn in November 1894, she wore numerous diamond ornaments, the splendid bridal circlet topped with diamonds as a crown, placed on her head by the Dowager Empress Marie Feodorovna. The glittering jewelry Alexandra wore as an imperial bride is captured in the flickering candlelight of Lauritz Tuxen's wedding portrait, recording the event in the Imperial Church of the Winter Palace. Queen Victoria sent Alexandra a pendant containing her portrait and a ring, which she wore on the wedding day itself. Alexandra wrote to her grandmother, "The lovely ring I wore for the wedding and ever since, and when I look at it I have to think of the beloved giver." No photographs seem to have been taken of the imperial wedding, perhaps because of the odd and unusual atmosphere surrounding a grand wedding in the midst of a funeral time of Tsar Alexander III. We have to be satisfied with descriptions, sketches, and paintings of the wedding instead. The elderly Queen Victoria couldn't make the trip to Russia, so Grand Duchess Ella wrote her grandmother a letter containing a description and sketches of Alix's wedding and clothes. Ella knew the ensemble well. The bridal attire of the Romanovs was standard, dictated by imperial code, and Ella had essentially worn the same thing for her own wedding. All Romanov imperial brides wear dresses made of cloth of silver or gold, with jeweled buttons down the skirt, topped by a velvet and ermine mantle. Their diamond accessories include the grand tiara made for Empress Elizabeth, which features the Paul I pink diamond, as well as the nuptial crown, the cherry earrings, the diamond necklace, the diamond bracelet, and the cloak clasp, which was made for Catherine the Great. Ella sketched Alix's wedding dress without the jewels and the velvet cloak. In her letter, she discussed the lace veil worn by Alix as her bridal veil. It was the same lace wedding veil that was worn by her mother, Princess Alice, and her sisters, Princess Victoria, Grand Duchess Ella, and Princess Irene. Alexandra would give jewelry as personal presents to her close friends, brooches being a particular favorite. Jeweled gifts also arrived from Imperial Russia for her various godchildren, including gold pins. As Tsarina, ropes of pearls were a favorite choice. Poignantly, like the bracelets which she could never take off, and the bracelets belonging to the imperial children, the engagement ring from Tsar Nicholas II could also never be removed. When the Commandant Yurovsky demanded to see the jewels that the Russian imperial family had on in Ipatiev House, he was not able to remove some of them. We know this from Alexandra's diary entry from July 1918, also N. Nicholas's engagement ring, which he could not take off. Imagining the Tsarina likely sitting down while a Bolshevik commander tried to rip jewels off her fingers is really symbolic of the looting of the Russian people by Zionist Bolshevik forces during the 20th century. Weakened by World War I with millions of brave young men dead, a war against brothers occurring, Bolsheviks infiltrated the Russian government. When Nicholas II's uncle informed him he should make his son Alexei Tsar, Nicholas II and Empress Alix refused, terrified of the hemophilia coursing through him. There is a lot of evidence that Empress Alix was heavily influenced by the degenerate mystic Rasputin, who encouraged Nicholas II to abdicate and grow flowers. But the appointment of Alexei as Tsar would have been an effective choice because the Empress and Emperor could have maintained some position as regents and potentially left the country when it came to it. As it was, Nicholas II's useless, womanizing brother Michael was chosen for the crown, and he subsequently abdicated as well, plunging the empire into chaos. Tsar Nicholas II was the patron of the Imperial Society for Proper Hunting. As such, Fabergé created their silver hunting trophies, which begin to show the Zionist Star of David around the turn of the century, showing the absolute influence of Bolsheviks in Russia at the time. Made by Fabergé in Moscow between 1899 and 1905, the silver trophy is decorated in neoclassical taste, with ribbons tied in laurel garlands, a ribbon-tied reeded rim, and chaste acanthus leaves. The front is finely engraved with the emblem of the Imperial Society for Proper Hunting, a double-headed Russian imperial eagle, and an elk's head laid on the six-pointed star with the recipient's name and date, January 1905. Poignantly and sadly, a single diamond earring was recovered following the brutal murder of the Russian imperial family. It's believed this earring belonged to Alexandra, despite Grand Duchesses Olga and Tatiana also owning diamond earrings. Even the tiny book of telegraphs and cipher at the time of the royal pair's engagement had come with them to the Apadiev house. It was found afterwards. Baroness Buxhoveden, close friend of Empress Alix, remembered, "This little book was one of the tragic mementos found in the house at Ekaterinburg. The Empress treasured so deeply every souvenir of that time that even in her imprisonment she had it with her." In their wartime correspondence, the period of their engagement was remembered with personal gifts, although not always jewelry. Alexandra sent Nicholas an icon for the anniversary of the engagement in 1915, reflecting the subdued tones of the Fabergé eggs that same year. Nicholas sent a cross. "You do spoil me. I never for a second imagined you would think of giving me anything. How lovely it is. Shall wear it today." Like so much with Empress Alix, regardless of time or distance, the association to her jewelry remained the same. Although Russia was in its second year of the First World War in 1915, her lines could have been written during the period of their engagement back in 1894, so deep was her devotion. A unique 17th century Russian brass cross necklace which belonged to Grand Duchess Tatiana, the second daughter of Tsar Nicholas II, was brought to America and sold by Armand Hammer in 1933. The cross was seemingly given to Tatiana during one of her pilgrimages and provides clues for the crosses that may have been given by Empress Alix. It is very likely the cross initially belonged to a venerated monk or priest, possibly a canonized saint of the Russian Orthodox Church. Likely the original 17th century chain was much longer and was shortened to fit Tatiana's neck. The chain has a gold clasp made of Russian rose gold from the early 1900s. Armand Hammer, born in 1898, dying in 1990, was an American entrepreneur, and he started doing business in Soviet Russia in 1921 and stayed there until 1930. He met with Lenin in person and was granted permission to develop the Lena River gold mines of Siberia. In the late 1920s, under Stalin's regime, Hammer's concession in the gold mines was revoked. As a compensation, Stalin allowed him to purchase almost the entire remaining contents of the Alexander Palace, the last residence of the Russian Tsar Nicholas II, which mostly consisted of personal items of the Romanovs. Belongings of the Imperial Russian family were sold in America in the 1930s at the Hammer Gallery in New York, as well as at department stores, including Lord & Taylor. One tiara of Empress Alix's is well known. Her Boucheron coronet is a tiny tiara composed of diamond floral and scroll designs surrounded by a series of natural pearls made by Boucheron in the 1890s. In 1894, shortly after his proposal to Alexandra, this coronet came into being. Tsar Nicholas II purchased the coronet for his fiancée as an engagement present. The purchase of the diadem actually happened in England. Nicholas visited Alix and her grandmother, Queen Victoria, at Windsor in 1894's summer, following the official engagement announcement. In his book on the Romanov jewels, Stefano Papi includes an image of a note written from Windsor Castle on Nicholas's behalf by Prince Dmitry Borisovich Galitzin. The note requests that Mr. Albert, a representative from Boucheron, should bring, quote, the things you would like to show the future Tsar to Windsor, scheduling the appointment for July 17, 1894. Presumably, Nicholas purchased the coronet from Albert at Windsor Castle on that date. Alix, who took the name Alexandra Fyodorova when she married Nicholas in November 1894, wore the little pearl and diamond coronet for the rest of her life. She wore it in a series of portraits taken in 1906, pairing it with other pieces of pearl jewelry. She also wore the tiara in other poses from this portrait series, including photos taken with her son, the Grand Duke Alexei, and her sister, Princess Louise of Battenberg. But you probably recognize it from the royal portraits of 1914. Confiscated by the Bolsheviks, it has not been seen since. In 1916, Empress Alexandra wore her personal jewelry on the anniversary of her engagement. She wrote to Nicholas in April 1916, "That dear brooch will be worn today. I feel still your gray suit, the smell of it by the window in the Coburg Schloss." Although it had been 22 years, she was still using her personal jewelry to physically connect with her husband on the day of her engagement. Jewelry was not the only treasures of the Romanov family other than their love. Egg cups from the Royal Standard yacht are simple and lovely in detail. Fine silver cigarette cases were seemingly gifts from the Grand Duchesses serving as nurses during World War I to Red Cross doctors like General Dr. Philip Newton. At the beginning of World War I, General Newton was in charge of American Red Cross ambulance truck shipments from the United States to Russia. Around 1915, he entered the Russian military service in the rank of a general. He was the youngest general of the Russian Imperial Army at the time, at 27 or 28 years old. He served as a commander of the motorized Red Cross American Brigade under the patronage of Grand Duchess Tatiana Nikolaevna. He personally knew the Grand Duchesses, Empress Alix, and Rasputin. A children's book given to Grand Duchess Olga Nikolaevna by her parents as a birthday gift in 1903 is also notable because it was in German. Mein erstes Märchenbuch is a book of fairy tales with colorful illustrations published in Stuttgart, Germany. The fly-leaf was inscribed by Empress Alix in pencil in English and Russian. For Darling Olga, from Papa and Mama, the 3rd of November 1903, Skiernovitsy. Grand Duchess Olga, the first child of the royal couple, was born in November 1895, so she was turning 8 upon the gift of this book. Skiernovitsy was the Tsar's hunting lodge in Poland, where the family went during the gaming season. Fairy tales were of the utmost importance to the royal children, and The Swan Princess was another popular title, appearing on cigarette cases from the time, perhaps inspired by the Tchaikovsky piece. Autographed photographs of the entire royal family, including Empress Alix, also continue to appear today, indicating they may have been given as souvenirs or mementos. Where was all of this jewelry kept? The last Tsar's family was relatively humble when it came to public displays of wealth. An antique brass-mounted wooden jewelry box in the form of an ancient Russian chest circa 1913 may give us clues. Completely covered with finely chased brass appliques and further decorated with colored cabochon glass inserts, has been found recently. It is nearly a foot tall and 8 inches wide. The box is believed to have been presented to the Tsars. It is likely that before the revolution, the box was kept in a special room of the Alexander Palace where similar gifts were housed. Perhaps this was the mauve room, which the Romanov girls loved so much. The front and back of the box are chased with identical double-headed eagles, stylized floral designs, and a view of a medieval Russian city. To top off this incomplete collection of Empress Alix's jewels, the extent of which we will probably never know due to the Bolsheviks, let's look at the pearl and diamond diadem of the Empress. The diadem, which seems like the appropriate description of the head ornament, which is too large to be described as a tiara, has an uncertain provenance. We know it was in the Empress's collection by 1906, but we don't know where it's from. A.E. Fersman, who made the famous catalog of Romanov jewels after the Revolution, listed the diadem as a 19th century jewel. He believed that the diadem was the most impressive jewel from the entire collection, and it's difficult to disagree. In Jewels of the Romanovs, Stefano Papi takes issue with Fersman's creation date, arguing that the diadem was made by the court jeweler Bolan expressly for the Tsarina, but with antique pearls and diamonds from the Imperial collection. We know the imposing diamond and pearl jewel was in Alexandra's collection by the spring of 1906 because she wore it for the official opening of the First Duma in St. Petersburg, of movement towards democracy away from the authoritarian structure of Russia. A correspondent from the Times was on hand to witness the Duma opening. He described the attire of the two women as follows. The young empress was in white and gold, and the Empress Marie in white, trimmed with black sable. The images depict the empress in full imperial court dress, including jewels, a veil, imperial orders and decorations, and an elaborately embroidered court gown to accompany the diadem. Her bejeweled fan was made by Alix in 1894, the year of her marriage. The pearl and diamond choker necklace and the long pearl and diamond cluster necklace were probably created by Bolan to accompany the diadem, although neither necklace appears in the Fersman inventory, indicating their theft or being lost at some point. Papi states it likely that the two necklaces were taken by the Empress to Tobolsk and then disappeared, and so it's not known if she managed to get these out to nuns in Tobolsk or if they were simply stolen and sold. We know the diadem was photographed by the Bolsheviks in their complete haul in 1918, and a record of it appears in 1992, but since then this huge and magnificent diadem has been totally lost. What is your favorite piece of the Tsarina's jewelry?